Welcome to Every Child Belongs. I'm Kim Botto, an adoptive mom, grandma, an advocate for kids and teens with disabilities, as well as a longtime leader of kids and student ministries. In this show, we explore how we can create spaces where every child feels heard and valued, whether neurodivergent, differently abled, or they've experienced trauma. Every child belongs. We'll hear from educators, parents, professionals, and more, finding practical ideas that help build a compassionate and supportive world for every child. Let's get started.
Well, hey, since you're hearing my voice first, that means this is a different kind of episode. Is that fair to say, Kimball?
Yeah, it is, David.
It's been, it's hard to believe it's already been a year since Kim launched this podcast. And so this episode is taking a look at the past year and what can we take from that and move forward with it. So,
Right.
Kimball, you usually do a great job of listening to the guests, but the tables have been turned. You're in charge, but you're also the guest right now. So
I'm always in charge, Dave.
fair.
That's true.
Fair. Well, I mean, in this context, how about that?
Okay. I feel like actually on the podcast you're in charge.
I'm a silent presence.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
A silent, encouraging, kind presence. Because it sounds nefarious the other way.
Oh, that's a big word, Dave. Yeah.
That's my one for the day then. Kim, let's talk about, it's been about a year. This was in line with a book that you had just finished, which I'm very proud of you for having finished.
Thank you, Dave.
We'll get into the details, but what's this past year meant for you?
Oh, gosh. I think the past year has been surprising. Lots and lots of surprises. For one, I didn't know if I'd ever really finish the book, but I did. Thanks to my friends at Blue Hat Publishing who pushed me. But Dave, you were the first one to push me. As I've said for a decade, you've been saying write a book. The response has been amazing. I wrote it mainly for children's ministry leaders or organizational leaders, and the response from parents surprised me. Talking about surprises, how much they felt seen and heard by it. So that was fun. I've gotten to meet a whole bunch of cool people, gotten to do some really fun projects with amazing organizations. That has been fun. I have traveled a ridiculous amount of time, ridiculous to where I often don't. I one time I headed to the airport. I knew I was going to Texas, but I wasn't sure if it was Houston or Dallas. But I looked at my boarding pass and I knew. But that's been kind of fun in my kind of retired life. Another thing that's been surprising and really hopeful is people really do want to create spaces where every child belongs. They really do. Some of them just aren't aware of how some of their actions actually do the opposite. They aren't aware of how if there's a reason behind kids' behavior. So, yeah, it's been a fun year. And we added a new grandchild to the mix right around the time we launched the podcast. So that was fun.
That's a full plate.
Yeah, it's been good.
We were talking before we started recording, and I know rationally we've done that many. It just doesn't feel like it. Like
Right.
it's felt less because it's been fun, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's been really fun. And also in the midst of all that, Dave, we recorded an audiobook.
We did.
The audiobook is out now. Boundless Hope for Every Child is on Audible, and you were the producer of that. You sat and listened to every single word over and over again. So thank you for that. And I just want to say about the podcast too, the podcast would not have happened without you. I remember having lunch, I think it was like October, November, talking about book launch, and you passed this stack of papers across the table to me as far as what I needed to do to launch the book in a good way. And you said, and we'll do a podcast. And I'm like, we'll do a podcast? Like, I don't know how to do a podcast. And I think basically you said, well, you know how to talk and ask questions. And basically that's what's happened. And you've taken care of all the rest. So thank you, David.
That's nice of you. I did try to encourage you over the years to write the book.
You did.
And at the same time, you wrote the book. So you're the one that did it. I encouraged you. That's great. And it doesn't happen unless you do it. And you did it. And as far as the marketing stuff and the plan and all that, I've been in your spot before where you've put a ton of time and effort into making a thing. For you, it was the book. And the thing that you get surprised about is there's a ton of effort in making the thing, but then you have to put an equal amount of time and effort into telling people about the thing.
Right.
And
Right.
at that point, if you're almost done with making the thing, you're pretty tired.
Yeah.
'Cause it's like, this is the thing that you want to make it good. It took time. It took a lot of effort. Then you wanted to make it better. And so there's a surprise at the end of that of, "Oh, yeah, well, oh gosh, it's done now. Great. I can just put it out there and then people are gonna hear about it because it's so good."
Not true.
And then there's this whole side of if you're good at making things, that's the skills and abilities to then promote the thing or talk about the thing or talk about yourself. Like, that's a whole different skill set.
Whole different thing, yep.
So just from that perspective, I knew where you were gonna take the book, and then I got to see the book, and it's like, well, we need to what's the plan to get it out there? So then how can that happen without people finding out about it?
Mhm,
So and
mhm.
that I'm encouraged just getting to hear some of the stories through you. I just think there's a lot of positive generational change that's going to happen because a lot of people are going to be influenced, or even if they don't directly read the book, they're going to be impacted by it.
Right.
And the people in the communities putting the time and effort, all the people that you've gotten to talk with
Oh,
about
so
what
great.
people are already doing and how
Yes.
those takeaways can influence the broader community. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been really good. I'll tell you one story that's been encouraging through the year, and this is a guy who has listened to the podcast and he's read the book. And when we first started talking, actually, it was before I was even writing the book. And he was talking about kids with disabilities. They just need a place in the church. I mean, he goes, they're not going to get it. I mean, like we're not going to do a lesson for them or anything like that because they're not going to get it. And I was talking to him recently, and he was talking about the importance of discipling everybody, and that the church needs people who are different. And it's not just about us doing for them. They in turn do for us if we just open our doors to them and do what the Bible calls us to do and disciple them. I'm like, whoa, that's a huge change. So God has really worked on his heart
Yeah.
over the years. And so that's been fun too. And it's true.
When we talk about leaders getting into disability ministry, is there a theme that you've seen as far as like how people are getting into disability ministry?
Well, what I used to think and what I have learned this year in talking to so many different people. So what I used to think was, oh, you have to be in proximity to somebody with disability, like in your family, your child, something like that. And that's how you get into disability ministry because that's how a lot of people do. But then some of the conversations, actually some of the podcasts who haven't come out, like with Ryan and Dr. Eric Carter, they got into it because they just when they were young adults, they met some people with disabilities who are really awesome. They're like, "I wanna be friends with them." And they're like, "I want other people to be friends with them." And that grew into both of them have dedicated their lives to creating spaces where every person can belong no matter their ability. There's also just some people that kind of fell into it. Like I think of Jess Berryhill. That was such I loved our conversation with her.
Yeah.
She was a youth minister and some kids showed up with disabilities and she didn't know how to include them. And God spoke to her, I forget what she said, Home Depot or Lowe's or something. And she bought locks for a kid that he loved locks. And by playing with the locks, he was able to participate. And now she has a house where people with disabilities and typical young adults live together. They go on camping trips. They have, Christmas with matching pajamas. And she fell into it. She did not seek it out. God put her in the right place in the right time. Well, I guess she did have a choice, but she chose to do this. I mean, her life has been forever changed.
And if I remember correctly, she didn't look at it from the perspective of how can I help this kid with special needs feel included. It was, hey, I've got a kid in my community, and how can I help him better connect to the rest of the community? The more I've gotten to listen to all the conversations you've had with other people and then the things that you've written in the book, like, yeah, a lot of these things really are helpful for serving this group that you were trying to help, but they're also just good ideas for everyone.
That's
Like
right.
Jess's
That's right.
concept of how do I help this person feel more connected? That's a great
Right.
idea for everybody. Like, how
That's
about we
right.
just do that? And then the idea of being patient with another person because you don't know what their what are their challenges that day or in that moment, and it's like, oh, that's a good idea when you're having a conversation with anyone.
Right. Right. Well, I don't know if you remember this, Dave. We were at lunch before I even started writing the book, and I was telling you about what I thought I would write about. And you said, oh, so basically it's just about being a decent human being, especially when other people are like frustrating. Yeah. Be a decent human being. That's what it's about.
It's like there is a different level of consideration that you might need to apply to people that have unique needs.
Right.
But gosh, those are actually that level of consideration is just nice for everyone.
Right.
So, how are you putting yourself in a position where you have the time and the patience to just operate in that way, not turn
Right.
it on or off depending on the person that's across from you. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so the big theme was proximity.
Yeah, the theme is proximity. And that's really why we started this podcast, Dave, because a lot of people don't have people in their lives who have disabilities or who have experienced trauma. So we wanted them to hear stories. So they might not be in physical proximity, but at least they're close enough to hear the stories and hear how disabilities or neurodivergence or trauma impacted a kid or an adult. Because we talked to Dr. Lamar Hardwick, who I love,
Yeah.
who he's an adult that's diagnosed with autism. And we just wanted people, I mean, I think when we get closer and we understand a bit more, then our empathy and compassion grows. And that's what we want.
One when you spoke about how not everyone has the proximity just because of where they are located, that also kind of ties into the next thing. Like, what's as far as like whose responsibility is it to figure out? Because sometimes you've got situations where it's like, okay, who's going to do what? This is a new situation, at least for that community or that group. Like, what was the theme that popped out for that for you?
I mean, it's the adult's responsibility. And it's not the adult's responsibility to fix the kid. It's the adult's responsibility to dig beneath the behavior to figure out what's the need, or maybe there's a developmental gap. Like they're not doing it because they simply don't have the skills to do it. And there were a couple, I heard Johnny Gessenhughes, who he's an elementary school principal, and he talked about when he first got into education, he just kind of assumed that every kid had the same background he did, where he was supported and he had the tools that he needed at home, and he realized they don't. And he was one of the ones who said, "It's our responsibilities as educators, as adults, to get the kid what they need." So he once he got in proximity to kids who were different, it changed his outlook. And I think, like, not only is our responsibility to help meet the need, but we also need to stay in the game. And I loved, Dr. Dwana when I asked her, "Where do adults get it wrong?" And I mean, she didn't miss a beat. And she said, "They give up too soon." She works with a lot of kids who've experienced trauma, and she said, sometimes it takes years before you'll see much fruit, but just stay in the game, keep connecting with them, don't give up. And I think sometimes as the adults, we I mean, I know we do. I do give up too soon.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Johnny and his team at the school, and one of the things that sticks out for me memory wise is them talking about the bocce ball team
Yes.
and how
Yes.
they tore up this really nice looking grass. They had to make space for the bocce ball, and so they tore up grass. And the awareness of the people making the decisions, saying, "Okay, what's our goal? Our goal is to serve the kids." So like
Mhm.
this grass looks nice, but the grass doesn't serve the goal. The bocce ball is going to serve the goal more than the grass. So
Right.
see you later, grass. So like
Right.
just it's like what's the goal? Okay, what's important, what's not important, and they went after the goal.
Grass isn't that important, but
No.
creating sports teams where kids who don't get the opportunity to play on a sports team get to play, that's way more important than grass.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I love I've actually gotten to go up there for bocce ball before, and it's great for all the kids, not just kids with disabilities.
When it sounds like you hear about it after the fact and you're like, "Oh yeah, that makes total sense." But somebody had to ask that question, "What's the goal?
Right.
It's a school. What's the goal?" So,
And it's not convenient. It wasn't convenient to tear up the lawn. Also, the school staff stays after. On the days where it's bocce ball day, it happens after school. So when they could be leaving, they are making the choice to stay and supervise and act as referees or, I don't know what you call it at bocce ball, which you are, but the rule keepers. Yeah, it's a super cool thing.
the bocce judges? I don't know.
I don't know what you call them.
I don't know either. But good for them. Good for them doing that
Yep,
thing that we don't know the name of.
yep, yep, good for them. Thank you.
What's the next thing that sticks out for you?
I think just the importance of listening. Lots of people talked about that. And as adults, I think we get so caught up in the task at hand, we forget to listen. And especially, I think for some reason, we don't think this is important to listen to little people in our lives, kids as it is adults. And Chuck, he had a quote, and I looked it up because he wasn't sure who said it.
Oh, Chuck Mingo?
Yeah, Chuck Mingo,
Yeah.
and it's by David Augsburger is a quote, and it's, "Being listened to is so close to being loved that most people cannot tell the difference." So if we want a kid to feel loved, it's listening to them, and also listening can bring healing. Beth Guggenberger talked about, for kids who've experienced trauma, their brain undergoes some changes, but neuroplasticity is the science that shows that the brain can change. And she said 2 of the fastest ways to help the brain change is through listening and play. A lot of people go, "Oh, I don't know what to do with this kid. He's had this hard background and all that." And she's going, "It's not that hard. Listen and play." And I think that's another thing. We complicate it too much. And when Beth said listen and play, I mean, anybody can listen and play. And if you don't know how to play, then just sit down on the floor and do what the kid's doing, or pick up a ping pong paddle and play with a teenager in your life. And also, as far as not complicating it, I think Lara Roberts, of Raising Autistic Disciples, and she has her middle son is autistic. And she talks about, some people think because kids aren't verbal or, they operate in different ways that they can't understand the gospel. And I loved how she talked about God's not going to create somebody who can't know him.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're going to know him. And then she simplified it in proclaim and saturate. Say it over and over again. Communicate the gospel to them over and over again. I mean, say it and then say it over and over again. And then it's the job of the Holy Spirit to convict, which I thought was very freeing for a lot of parents who, um, they want their kid to know Jesus. And so they just need to talk about it and talk about it some more.
Yeah. A lot of these parents are dealing with a lot of things
Yeah, they are.
on their own,
Yeah, they are.
or it's a new thing. So being able to be connected to other people to help them navigate it, or just to empathize with the situation, whatever it is. You combine those themes, and it's the adult's responsibility. They need to be patient, keep trying, and slow down.
Mhm.
Not necessarily in that order.
Right. Right. And then you were talking about the parents and just the importance of community, and we talked to quite a few parents who have kids who've experienced trauma, or, they're disabled or neurodivergent, and every single one of them, everyone had a story of feeling isolated, but then breaking through and gaining community. But it seems like when they get that first diagnosis, and this is something I think for all of us to learn from, if somebody gets a diagnosis and you haven't walked the walk with them before, then they don't need advice for you or ideas of medications, or, they need casseroles. They need you to mow the lawn. They need you to take maybe the other kids to sporting events. But every single one of the parents had to be brave and eventually step out and share with somebody what was going on. And the best analogy I thought was Carrie Baker, a good friend of mine who has Brady is, I think he's in middle school, who is autistic. And she said when they first got the diagnosis, they didn't even speak the word autistic in their home for years. And she said we were swimming in a private pool. We didn't want anybody else in knowing what was going on. And then once she started communicating, then she built this wonderful supportive community around her. And also her son Brady started communicating too. I remember she told a story about him telling kids he was autistic and coming home and telling her, and she was like a little like, "Oh," because she's wondering if that was the right thing to do. And then he said, another kid then said, "Oh, I'm autistic too." And that kid had never shared it. So when we share what's going on, it gives other people the opportunity to be vulnerable and open up.
Yeah, I think it was really helpful when some of the parents were talking about things that had been helpful when their community was trying to be helpful.
Uh-huh.
And there was a specificity to, instead of just saying, you let me know what's helpful and I'll do that thing. And I think there was kindness in saying that. There just wasn't an awareness that that parent was already dealing with a lot of things to navigate and problems to solve and new, like there was just a lot of new things going on. And so what seemed to be more helpful in general was offering specific help.
Right,
And
right,
even if it's not the help that they needed, the fact that you were asking was appreciated.
right.
And so if it's like, "Hey, can I take your car and go vacuum it out?" Or, "Hey, we're going to the grocery store. Can I pick you up anything? Do you need milk?" You know, again, specificity. So
Mhm.
maybe it's no to milk, but it's yes to whatever else. So
Yeah,
that seemed to be better received
right.
or actually more helpful.
Well, and I when we were talking to Heather Meyer, I had an example of my own life. When we adopted our 2 youngest, it was really hard, and she was riding in my car, and my car didn't have shocks, and she's like, "Oh, this is dangerous." And she gave me a time to drop off my car, and she and her husband, Jim, took care of it. They just put new shocks in my car because it was beyond what I could deal with at that point. And for churches, I think it shows just the need for people to be in community with other people who are going through similar things, and community groups, support groups, whatever you call it at your church, whether it be for foster, adoptive, and kinship parents or for parents who are raising kids with disabilities. That is a great service that you can do, not just for the people in your church, but your community. People outside of your community are desperate for it, and you will grow your community by doing that. People who never would have stepped foot of your doors on the weekend will come during the week to be with other parents like them.
Because it's hard.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
a hard situation, and there's value in community.
As we continue this conversation, I want to let you know my new book, Boundless Hope, is available now. If you're looking for more resources, strategies, and encouragement to assure every child feels like they belong, this book is for you. Visit kimbotto.com or Amazon to order your copy today.
Can you speak to the challenge in being different?
Yeah, especially for kids, and then you get to be a teenager, you don't wanna be different. Different isn't viewed as something you aspire to, and so if you do have a limb difference or, Jen Kendall is a little person, also known as a dwarf, as is her daughter, and just talks about navigating a world not built for you. 'Cause if you're I mean, the world's built for typical people. I mean, the noise levels, the way we communicate, all this, it's built for typical people. So, I think those of us who are typical understanding that it is harder, and also there's, like Jen talked about, there's also some ways that are pretty awesome. And Eleanor said she's great at hide and seek. She feels sorry for tall people, hide and seek's harder. So,
Yeah.
there's good and there's challenges. And we just need to be aware of that and be on alert on how we might assist. We ta I confessed to Jen the first time we had lunch, and I felt bad because she couldn't reach the soda machine, and I didn't know what to do, and so I ended up doing nothing, which that's the wrong thing. And so she gave me very specific advice. Just say, "Hey, Jen, why do they make those so high? Can I help you get a drink? What are you drinking?" And I think too often when we feel awkward or unsure, we do nothing. And it's much better to just take a step and try.
Yeah. So when you think about barriers, like that's a barrier. What have been other barriers besides just, if you're not close to the situation, you don't know what to do. It's easy to just be like, I'm not going to do anything. You just kind of get frozen.
Mhm.
Like that's a barrier. What are other barriers you've seen as far as theme wise?
People making assumptions on the reason behind a behavior. Because if we're making assumptions, which could also be viewed as being judgmental, then we're not gonna be curious. You can't be curious and judgmental at the same time. So I think that's a barrier. When we think we know, so I would say the antidote for that is be curious. And I could have done that with Jen, just been curious. "Hey, so how you gonna get your drink? What can I do to help?" Also, when we talk about barriers, and specifically barriers to belonging, I love Dr. Robert Crosby from Returning Kids Institute, where he talked about the research that they had done, and that behavior, that's like the biggest barrier to kids belonging in church. a behavior that doesn't meet our expectations, people are viewing it as intentional or a kid being defiant or belligerent, but really, especially for a kid who's experienced trauma, their behavior might be indicating to us that they're overwhelmed or they're afraid. And so he gave some just really simple, practical tips. I love that. I use that podcast a lot in trainings because he gives very specific tools that you can do to help a kid feel safe and to help regulate the behavior. And I will say another thing though on regulating the behavior, I think a lot of people, they'll reach out to me and they'll say, "Well, just tell me what to do. Like, give me 3 steps." It's different. Like, it depends on the kid. It depends on the context. It depends on if they have Fruit Loops for breakfast every morning and they didn't have any Fruit Loops. And I like Dr. Chenway Williams. Do you remember, Dave, like, during her podcast, she said, "It depends," so many times. And I love that because what she was letting us know is there aren't many black and white answers. It depends. And so we have to stay curious and flexible and waiting to respond.
There's nuance in every interaction.
Right.
There's not a checklist or a do these 5 things exactly this every time. It's what's going on? What are the things you don't know about that happened that day or right there that and they might not even be able to if you could ask that person what's going on, they might not even be able to even if they
Right.
could communicate it, they may not be
Right.
able to communicate. They might not even know. Which sounds like that sounds like me, Kim. That doesn't sound like these abstract other people. These sound like things that
That's all of us.
it's all of us, yeah.
That's right. But Dave, I wanna ask you, so you've been asking me, like, what were the things that stuck out to you? Themes or, a specific idea?
I think something to your point that there was things that were more solidified through these conversations, and then there was other things that were things I hadn't even considered. But then, in retrospect, it's like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. So the idea that these concepts that you talk about in your book, but then how you also see these other people carrying out practically in their unique ways in their situations. These ideas are just helpful when you're interacting with other people. And everyone that you interact with is a person. I think Lara Roberts talking about how she knows that her son can connect to Christ because how could God make anything that wouldn't have relationship with him? Like that
Right.
seems counter to the Father. So
Right.
I was like,
It
oh
is.
yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah.
Or like,
Right.
when Dr. Hardwick was talking about the way he's able to present himself when he's teaching is different than the way he is for him it's flipping a switch.
Mhm.
And so when he's in that situation, he is someone that doesn't necessarily present as autistic.
Mhm.
And also knowing that he didn't get diagnosed until much later in life, there was things that he had to figure out along the way just to function in a world that wasn't built for him.
Right.
And
Right.
in all these different places, you've got people considering ways in which they can help other people function in an environment or a community that wasn't built for them. But by doing that, it changes the people that want to have everybody included. And it also makes it easier for everyone to be included. And so,
Right. Right.
yeah, those are big ones for me. For everyone that you talked with, you could easily talk to each one of them longer. So, and there's things that didn't even get discussed until after the microphones were off. And so
Right.
I'm looking forward
Right.
to hearing more of these conversations and with the things that didn't even get discussed.
Right. You know what? And I think that's one thing I learned through this too is for the earlier episodes, I had more scripted questions and what I would ask. And I still have those scripted questions to fall back on. But so often the best stuff just comes up with just getting to know them and hearing more of their story. And Josh Zello, who his episode hasn't dropped yet, but him talking about he has a speech impediment, he stutters. And the stuff that came out, that was nowhere on the list. I didn't know that. And just how what is going on inside of him has now helped him to reach kids that weren't being reached before. He's created an environment where kids can feel at home and feel comfortable, and he attributes part of that because he has differences that he has to navigate in this world. He gave a really good I said so because what happens is sometimes he just can't get the word out. He told a hysterical story where he was gonna, Jesus was the next word, and he couldn't get the word out, and he said a preschooler in the first row yelled out, "Jesus!" Like, Josh didn't know it was Jesus. But also he said, and I think this applies, like you said earlier, applies in a whole bunch of situations. He said, "Sometimes just wait." Like, if I'm having difficulty getting the word out, you then speaking for me is not helpful. Just patiently wait, and I will be able to get it out. I thought that was really I think too often we step in, and Sissy Goff, she talked about that too, us stepping in, and one piece of advice she gave was for parents, think of 2 things that you're currently doing for your kid that they can do on their own. Think of 2 more things that you're doing for your kid that they can almost do, and just let them do it. But so often we wanna swoop in, whether it's a chore or a homework assignment for a kid, or in the case of Josh, it's somebody who's having trouble articulating something, and then we just jump in and do it for them. So that goes back to the just be patient and still and quiet.
Yeah, you're helping them in the long term by doing that.
Yeah,
All you're doing in the short term is helping yourself not feel uncomfortable.
right. Sissy calls it a crisis of capability. So what we're doing is we're making our kids feel like they're not capable of doing things because we keep doing it for them. Because in their little brain, Sissy didn't say this, but then I'm assuming in the kid's brain, they're assuming, "Oh, I can't do it. They're doing it for me because I can't do it."
Hmm. It's been a good year, Kim.
It's been fun, David. It's been fun.
Kim, we're kind of running up into that time of an episode where we usually get into the rapid fire questions. So,
Mhm.
what sticks out to you about this segment?
Some of the things that stuck out to me in the rapid fire questions is one of the question I don't ask the same questions every time, but one question I asked several times was, a memorable or favorite childhood gift, and how often it wasn't about the expense of the gift or it was just people felt known. Like when they got the Cabbage Patch doll that they were just it was the thing they wanted. Or Sissy Goff loved Sean Cassidy, and she got a Sean Cassidy album, but it wasn't just a Sean Cassidy album. It showed that somebody knew that she loved Sean Cassidy and bought that album for her. A couple we had a lot of people on here who love to read, and many of them, their favorite gift was a book series or a special book that they really loved, and they felt so known that somebody knew that they would love that particular book or book series, and Beth Guggenberger talked about she got a towel with her name on it, and it was hers.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. Makes me think for Christmas, I wanna do all these things that are to have my grandkids' names on it. Of course, I think you're not supposed to do that anymore because you don't want the world we live in. But anyway, I love the thought of that towel. She kept it for years and years because it had her name on it and everybody knew it was hers.
Yeah, there's just something to being known.
Yep,
There's just value in that.
yep, yep.
Since everyone else has gotten to answer rapid fire questions, I think it's your turn. What is your favorite Christmas present?
Gosh, I don't know what the brand was, but it was a bike, and it was blue with silver wheel guards, and it had those, little things hanging from the handlebars,
Okay.
and I loved that bike. It was because 'cause I'd been using hand-me-down bikes. The only problem was we lived on a really long gravel, hilly driveway, and that was a very, very hard driveway to ride on, but I love that bike. I still think of that bike. I wonder what happened to it. It's probably rusted in a dump somewhere. That's sad.
So
Let's ruin the moment. Let's ruin
that's
the
a great
moment.
finish to that question. Current or recent book you enjoyed?
Oh, I just read Scattered Minds by, Gabor Mate, I think is his name, and it's about ADHD. Really, really g I think, kids with ADHD have more negative interactions during the day than positive interactions, And I just love the way he frames it and gives us very specific advice on how to interact with kids, how to make their environments better for them. So, yeah, great book, Scattered Minds.
And Kim, if you were on a deserted island but you were also you had a fully functioning refrigerator and kitchen or delivery service,
Yes.
what food would you want all the time?
Tacos. That's the only right answer, actually, Dave. My mother was from Southern California, so I thought everybody had tacos and chili rellenos and burritos for Christmas Eve. I thought that was just the American traditional, Christmas Eve dinner, and it wasn't until I got married to Mark, who's from the South, and they're having beaten biscuits and ham, and I'm like, "What's up with this? Like, where's the tacos and salsa?" So, yeah, Mexican food.
And then last question, Kim, complete this thought. Every child
Every child deserves a space where they can be fully themselves and accepted and find their people, their place, and their purpose.
You zigged when I thought you were gonna zag, but it's still a good answer. So
What'd you
that's
think I
good
was gonna
stuff.
do? I had to think about it because I wanted to say every child belongs because I say that all the time,
Sure.
but I think that's just, so many of these kids that we are working hard to create the spaces for, they feel like they can't go into space and be themselves. They feel like they can't share their hard stories. They feel like they can't ask for help. Um, yeah.
No, it's good. It kind of ties back to what we were talking about earlier, where it's like you could have said every child belongs because that is true, and you say that all the time. But then it's like, hey,
Yep.
let me take a beat, think about it, and I'm gonna do whatever works in the moment. So,
Yep. That was funny. That was a surprise question.
but no, I think that's a strong way to finish out the episode. Kim, is there anything else? I mean, you are the guest, but again, you are also the host. So, is there any other?
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Thank you for listeners for listening. Also, in case you don't know, you go over to YouTube, Every Child Belongs, and we have video shorts that a lot of people are using for trainings for their volunteers, or they'll just watch it and get some ideas on what they can train their volunteers on. So if you don't have the attention span to listen to a whole episode, you can listen to the shorts. But I think if you listen to the shorts, then you'll want to go back and listen to the whole episode. So we've got a lot of people who've said some really good and meaningful and helpful and practical things. So yeah, thank you. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
That is actually a good reminder, Kim, to encourage the listeners to subscribe to the show. That is an easy way for you not have to remember to go looking for it when the next episode goes live. So
Yep.
I would encourage you to subscribe, and there are a lot of great conversations coming up.
Yeah. And I will say, I can't wait. You know, when we first started talking about this, Dave, we had the kind of people we thought we wanted to have on the show, counselors, therapists, parents, educators. I did not have barber on my list,
Yeah,
but we're going to be talking to a barber who is amazing. And that episode will drop in a couple months. There's good ones coming up.
there are. Well, Kimball, thanks for your time. Appreciate it as always.
Thanks, David.
And gosh, final word. What's your final word?
So many kids have lost hope in themselves because the adults around them have lost hope and they've given up. So I just want to encourage you, if you have a kid in your life that you just think, oh my gosh, there's no hope for this kid, there is. Science shows that there is based on neuroplasticity, and scripture shows that there is, as it talks about the renewing of their mind. So there is hope for that kid. And God is writing their story, not us. So it might be a different ending than we had hoped for, but we must hold on to hope for every kid that stands before us.
Well, Kim, thanks for a great year. It's been a pleasure to get to be a part of it. And thanks for everything you're doing.
Dave, thank you. It's been fun. And Dave, thanks for having me today. Thank you so much for joining me today on Every Child Belongs. If you found today's episode helpful, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. And don't forget to share this with a friend who might need to hear it. Together, we can create a world where every child belongs.